Stop for a moment. What I am about to speak is for you, and you know it even before the words fully land. You have been carrying something quietly, something no one around you has been able to name with you. You smile when you are expected to smile. You answer when you are expected to answer, but inside there is a weight that does not match the surface of your days. You have been moving through ordinary rooms with an extraordinary ache, and people keep mistaking your silence for peace. But your silence is not peace. Your silence is the sound of a heart that has been watching, waiting, and enduring while everyone else keeps calling it normal. You have felt the strain of being surrounded and still unseen. You have felt the strange loneliness of having to explain yourself to people who only hear the outline of your words. You have felt the sting of doors that should have opened, but did not. And because you have lived with that tension for so long, part of you has started to wonder whether you were asking for too much, reaching too far, or believing too hard. I came to tell you that you were not. Stay with me, because by the end of this message you are going to recognize the signs that have been circling your life, the pattern underneath those signs, and the deeper reason the pressure has been so intense. You are going to understand why what looked like delay was never denial, and why what looked like resistance was already being overturned before you could see it. You're also going to hear a declaration spoken over you that does not come from hesitation. It comes from recognition, and once it reaches you, it will not leave you where it found you. By the time we close, you will know why certain conversations have gone cold, why your inner world has felt louder than your outer one, why some relationships no longer fit your spirit, and why the same kind of conflict keeps trying to circle back to your life, only to lose its force. You will see that the pressure has not been random. You will see that the timing has not been random. You will see that the turning has already begun in places that no one around you can measure. And you will understand that this message did not arrive by accident. It came by appointment. It came because something in you was ready to hear what your mind has. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Been too busy to process. It came because the part of you that still believes in divine interruption has not gone silent. It came because heaven does not waste timing on the people who are being trained to recognize it. What I am speaking to you tonight is not decoration, it is confirmation. Something has been happening to you, and you have probably noticed it before you had language for it. The signs are not broad, they are precise. They are the kind of details that do not impress other people, but they keep pressing on your awareness until you cannot ignore them. You may have been waking at the same hour again and again, as if your body is being called to attention before the day begins. You may open your eyes and feel that sudden stillness, that strange alertness, as if the room is waiting for you to notice something you have not yet seen. That is not emptiness, that is invitation. You may have felt waves of emotion that do not match the scene in front of you. A quiet moment, and then tears. A harmless conversation, and then a heaviness that arrives without warning. A day that should feel fine, and yet there is a pressure behind your chest, as if your spirit is trying to shift weight from one side to the other. That is not fragility. That is calibration. You may have noticed that certain conversations now feel thin, even when they are polite. People speak, and you still hear them, but something in you no longer receives the old tone as truth. What once felt normal now feels rehearsed. What once felt close now feels distant. That is not coldness growing in you. That is alignment growing in you. You may have seen numbers, repeated phrases, unusual repetitions, or little confirmations appearing in places that have no reason to agree with one another. A receipt, a clock, a message, a license plate, a sentence spoken by someone who does not know what they just touched in you. That is not coincidence trying to look mystical. That is mercy trying to get your attention in the only language you were willing to notice. And perhaps the most unsettling sign of all is this. You keep sensing that something has changed, even when nothing visible has. You look around your life, and on paper it seems the same. But inside, the atmosphere is not the same. The air around your yes has changed. The air around your no has changed. The air around your waiting has changed. You are not imagining it. These signs are not accusations. They are confirmations. They are not telling you something is wrong with you. They are telling you that what was once buried is now surfacing, that what was once muted is now audible, and that what was once ignored is now impossible to overlook. The exhaustion is not failure. The distance is not rejection. The interruption is not punishment. Take a breath with me. Let that settle without resistance. If even one of those signs just landed in you, if your shoulders dropped even a little while listening, type the words 888 in the comments. That is not a performance. It is a small agreement. 888 is the frequency of overflow, and sometimes the first sign that overflow is near is that the old pressure starts to loosen. Type 888, then come right back to me, because there is something beneath these signs, and that deeper layer explains why they have felt so personal. Beneath the signs is a pattern, and the pattern is not that you are too sensitive. The pattern is that you have been carrying what should have been released a long time ago. You have been pulling on ropes that are no longer tied to anything. You have been investing energy where the movement stopped years ago. You have been speaking to situations as though enough sincerity could revive what has already completed its season. And because you are faithful, because you are persistent, because you do not give up easily, you kept calling that effort loyalty. But part of what has exhausted you is not devotion. It is attachment to an old mechanism that no longer has life in it. This is why certain efforts have felt heavier every time you repeat them. This is why some doors seem to require more from you than they give back. This is why you can work hard and still feel strangely misdirected. You are not lazy. You are overcommitted to something that no longer returns your investment. And the hardest part is that this pattern can hide inside noble language. It can sound like responsibility. It can sound like love. It can sound like patience. It can even sound like faithfulness. But underneath all of that, it is still the same hidden motion, reaching toward what is already withdrawing, trying to earn from what has already ended, asking a closed place to become open just because you are sincere. You have probably seen this across different areas of your life. It shows up in how you keep trying to explain yourself to people who are determined not to understand. It shows up in the way you keep revisiting a memory, a conversation, a disappointment, as if more analysis could make it come out differently. It shows up in the way you keep preparing for outcomes that require you to remain smaller than you truly are. It shows up in the quiet habit of bracing before you even enter the room. That pattern has trained you to live with one foot in the present and one foot in an old expectation of loss. So even when good things begin to move toward you, part of you stands back, waiting for the withdrawal you have learned to anticipate. You keep your hand on the door handle of your own life, ready to leave before you are left. This is not blame. This is naming. because what is unnamed keeps directing the story. What is named can finally be seen clearly enough to release. And there is a cost to staying in that pattern too long. You become skilled at endurance and less familiar with receiving. You become fluent in survival and uncertain in rest. You become impressive to others and invisible to yourself. You keep proving that you can carry more, but no one sees the quiet hunger that builds when carrying becomes your only identity. Here is the deeper layer, and it is the one that changes everything. Under the pattern is an older formation, something planted in you long before this season, long before this conflict, long before the latest disappointment tried to define you. It is like a courtyard that has always belonged to you, even though someone else once convinced you that you had to enter it through the back way. Imagine that courtyard. It was always yours. But for a long time it was covered, neglected, and spoken over by voices that did not understand its value. The stones are still there, the shape is still there, the space is still there. But at some point, the light was reduced, the center was obscured, and the people passing by were taught not to look too closely. That is what has happened to your inner place. The courtyard was not destroyed, it was covered. The shape of your true self was not erased, it was dimmed. The center was not broken, it was overlooked. And because it was overlooked for so long, you began to confuse concealment with absence. But absence is not the same as hiddenness. Hidden is not the same as gone. There was a time when the noise around you trained you to mistrust your own knowing. There was a time when you learned to soften what was sharp, hide what was holy, and lower the volume of what was unmistakably alive in you. So you built a habit of making yourself easier to approach, easier to manage, easier to overlook. You became careful with your own brightness because somewhere along the way, brightness felt expensive. That is why the courtyard image matters. Because what lives there is not dead. It is only waiting for the covering to be lifted. The floor has not vanished. The walls have not collapsed. The doorway has not disappeared. The place still exists, and it remembers you even when you have forgotten how to stand there without apology. The deeper wound was never that you lacked value. The deeper wound was that your value had to survive in an atmosphere that did not know how to honor it. And so your spirit learned to step lightly, speak carefully, and keep the strongest parts of yourself behind glass. That kept you safe for a time, but it also kept you tired. And now the tiredness is becoming a signal. It is showing you that you are no longer meant to live inside the coverings that were necessary once, but no longer fit. What was dimmed is beginning to answer the call of light. What was silenced is beginning to remember its own voice. What was made small is beginning to recognize the size of the room it actually belongs to. That is why the old pressure cannot stay. That is why the atmosphere is shifting. That is why the walls inside you are no longer convincing the same way they used to. The courtyard is not becoming new. It is becoming visible. Pause here and let the image stay with you. If the courtyard just rose up in you, if you can feel that place in your spirit becoming clear in a way that is hard to explain, type the words, "I am home," in the comments. Not as a wish, as a recognition. I am home is the sound of a place remembering the one who belongs to it. Type it, then come right back to me, because when you see that image clearly, you begin to understand the return that is already underway. The solution is not that you must become more forceful. It is not that you must become more impressive. It is not that you must chase harder, explain better, or prove more. The solution is a return to what was yours before the covering taught you to shrink. You do not need to earn your place in the courtyard. You do not need to build it from scratch. You do not need to convince the space to accept you. You were never called to manufacture belonging. You were called to remember it. This is where the pressure starts to soften, Not because all resistance disappears in one breath, but because your spirit stops negotiating with what has already been exposed. You begin to recognize that some of the exhaustion you have called normal is actually the cost of staying half outside your own life. When you return, you stop living as a guest in a place that was always meant to be inhabited by you. There are two simple anchors for this return. The first I call the morning threshold. Before you reach for anything else, before you let the day name you, sit still for a moment and speak quietly to the part of you that wakes first. Do not rush it. Do not correct it. Ask only this: what is still covered and what is already open? Let the answer rise without forcing it. The point is not to perform clarity. The point is to notice where your true self is already waiting. The second I call the release of the old route. Once a day, and especially when a familiar pressure returns, name the one rope you have been pulling that no longer leads anywhere. Name it plainly, not with drama, with honesty. Say, I am no longer carrying this route. Then breathe and let your body agree. The power of this practice is not in the words alone. It is in the willingness to stop treating dead movement as obligation. These are not tasks for you to master. They are ways of remembering how to tend the courtyard instead of guarding it. Tending is different from striving. Tending notices. Tending waters what is alive. Tending clears what should not remain. Tending protects the center without trying to become the center. And as you do this, something subtle begins to happen. The rooms inside you stop echoing so loudly with old judgments. The air gets cleaner, the floor becomes more familiar. The voice you had been muting starts to sound less like danger and more like truth. You realize that the life you have been waiting for was not on the other side of exhausting yourself. It was waiting on the other side of returning. That is the deeper mercy in this message. You are not being asked to become someone else. You are being invited to come back to yourself without the old covering. There is a difference between transformation and retrieval. Tonight, this is retrieval. And when retrieval begins, the old resistance loses its authority. The one who once tried to turn your collapse into a conclusion is already losing ground. The plan that was meant to bury you is becoming the place where your clarity is born. The pressure that was supposed to break you is revealing who has been carrying you. The door that looked sealed is showing you that it was only waiting for the right hand to touch it from the inside. Let that settle. If this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Some recognitions do not need noise, they only need witness. Sit with that for a moment. There is also someone coming to mind right now, and you know it because their face arrived while I was speaking, not because you went looking for it. It may be someone quietly tired, someone who keeps holding a posture nobody sees, someone who has been brave in a way that never got named, someone who has been carrying a private burden behind a composed face. It may be someone who keeps showing up for everyone else while never quite finding the room to tell the truth about their own ache. Send this to them, not as a recommendation, as a delivery. The same way it reached you, it can reach them. The same way it was appointed to your hearing, it can be appointed to theirs. Before this closes, I need you to hear the seal of your own identity. Type the words, "I am chosen," in the comments. Not as a hope, not as an attempt, as a confirmation. The agreement forming between heaven and your hearing across these minutes is not fragile, and it is not temporary. Let your fingers say what your spirit has been learning to believe. Type it slowly. Let it become plain. You are confirmed. You are being restored. You are being gathered back into what was always yours. You are not late. You are not lost. You are not abandoned in the courtyard. You are being called home. Right now, all across the world, others are receiving this same recognition in their own quiet places. They are hearing the same soft breaking of old coverings. They are noticing the same turning of the inner room. They're realizing that what felt like defeat was not the final word, and what looked like the end was only the first opening of the door. You are not alone in this hearing. You are part of what does not announce itself loudly, and that is exactly why it is real. It is sealed. You are not imagining the weight you have been carrying. You are standing at the edge of a reversal, and the very thing that was arranged against you is already losing its footing. What you have felt as pressure was not proof that you were abandoned. What you have felt as resistance was not proof that you were forgotten. It was the sound of something failing to hold. You have watched certain plans gather around your life like they had authority. You have felt the tension of people, systems, words, and hidden intentions trying to set a conclusion over you before your time. But there is a truth deeper than every visible arrangement, and that truth is this: the conclusion they tried to force was never theirs to keep. The fall was never yours. The fall was theirs. You can feel it now in the places where your strength was tested. You can feel it in the moments when their confidence seemed louder than your peace. You can feel it in the hours when you wondered whether you were the one under judgment, when in fact you were the one being preserved. Heaven did not lose sight of you. Heaven was working through the very pressure that seemed designed to remove you. There are seasons when the attack is not a sign of your weakness, but a sign that your presence has become impossible to ignore. You do not need to make that sentence louder. You only need to let it become true inside you. Because once it becomes true, the fear that tried to interpret your life begins to lose its voice. Some of what has surrounded you was not simply opposition, it was exposure. It was the uncovering of what could not stand. It was the steady revealing of what had no foundation. And while people were busy arranging a fall for you, they were building the conditions for their own collapse. That is why the atmosphere around your life has not felt stable. That is why the words spoken against you did not settle the way they were meant to. That is why certain accusations weakened under their own weight. That is why what was meant to shame you has started to lose its grip. What was constructed in haste cannot endure when truth enters the room. You have been living through a strange kind of reversal, one that only becomes clear after the dust begins to rise. At first, it looks like delay. Then it looks like confusion. Then it looks like delay again, because your mind keeps searching for the old pattern and finding only fragments of it. But the deeper reality is this: the structure against you is already cracking from the inside. And here is why that matters. Because you were never called to answer every accusation on the same level it was spoken. You were never called to fight for a place that was already being defended by a hand stronger than yours. You were called to remain, to endure, to keep your posture when everything around you tried to provoke panic. That is not passivity. That is alignment. You do not need to become the noise that tried to swallow you. You do not need to mirror the distortion that came near you. You do not need to lower your spirit to the level of what came to diminish you. The turning is happening in silence first, and silence is often where the deepest defeats are born for the thing that came to harm you. Keep that close. The thing that planned your collapse is now standing in the consequences of its own posture. This is why your peace has begun to feel stronger than your fear, even if only in brief moments. This is why a sentence that once would have broken you now passes over you and lands nowhere. This is why you are starting to notice that you no longer belong to the panic that once ruled your breathing. Something in you has already stepped back from the edge and is watching from a higher place. You are not becoming numb. You are becoming clear. And clarity changes everything. Clarity reveals who was speaking from envy, who was speaking from fear, who was speaking from control, and who was speaking from truth. Clarity separates the sound of strategy from the sound of distortion. Clarity shows you that not every loud voice had authority, and not every hidden plan had endurance. There was a plan to bring you down. That part is real, but there is a greater truth that stands over it. The plan could not survive contact with what God already declared about you. The moment truth met the hidden intention began to fail. The moment light touched the design began to unravel. The moment your name was held by heaven, the opposition lost its certainty. You may still be looking for the shape of what changed. You may still be trying to locate the exact moment the ground shifted. But some reversals do not announce themselves with thunder. Some reversals begin as a silent weakening of the thing that was supposed to defeat you. That is what this is. And now, even if you cannot explain it to anyone else, you can begin to recognize it in your own spirit. The fight is not becoming louder. It is becoming finished. The trap is not becoming tighter. It is becoming exposed. The attack is not becoming stronger. It is losing its right to stay. There is a strange mercy in that. You do not need to celebrate someone else's collapse. You do not need to rehearse bitterness to prove that you were wounded. You only need to stand in the place of truth and let truth speak for itself. The one who tried to set the fall now faces the fall. The one who dug the pit now meets the consequences of the pit. The one who tried to bury you has been buried beneath the very weight of its own intention. And you, even here, are still standing, still breathing, still called, still marked, still covered. That is not small, that is everything, because the real miracle is not that you were never touched by the battle. The real miracle is that the battle never got the final word. The thing they called an ending became a threshold. The thing they called a collapse became a collapse of their own plan. The thing they thought would silence you became the place where your voice began to carry a deeper authority. So do not measure this moment by what was aimed at you. Measure it by what remained after the aim failed. Measure it by the peace that stayed. Measure it by the strength that returned. Measure it by the way your spirit knows, without needing applause, that this was never the end of your story. The one who plotted your falling has already stepped into the shadow of its own making, and you have stepped into the place where that shadow no longer defines you. Let that settle inside you. You are coming out of this not as one who was spared by chance, but as one who was held by purpose. You are coming out of this with a quieter face and a stronger center. You are coming out of this with less need to explain yourself and more ability to stand where God placed you. You are coming out of this with the knowledge that what was done against you could not outrun what was spoken over you. That is why your next steps do not need to be frantic. They need to be faithful. Stay gentle with your heart. Stay honest with what you know. Stay near the truth when the old voices come back trying to narrate your life. Do not give the last word to the thing that already lost. Do not bow to a narrative that no longer matches what is happening now. What was set against you has met its limit, and what is rising in you has not. Before this closes, I need you to hear this with all the stillness you can carry. Type the words "I am chosen" in the comments. Not as a wish, not as a hope, as a confirmation. Let your fingers mark the moment your spirit already attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.